I'm going to make a statement that sounds strange at first, but the more you actually sit with it, the more it starts solving a lot of Dragon Ball's biggest continuity problems instead of creating new ones. What if Dragon Ball Super is not just a sequel to Dragon Ball Z, but the original cosmological timeline, and Dragon Ball Z is the rewritten timeline? Not erased, not non-canon, not filler, but rewritten history. Because when you really analyze the lore, the cosmology, and the narrative structure across both series, there are simply too many inconsistencies to pretend they exist as one perfectly seamless, untouched continuity without any deeper explanation. First, we need to be honest about how Dragon Ball has always handled retcons. Toriyama improvised constantly, but not all retcons function the same way. Some retcons expand the story, while others recontextualize it. For example, when Goku was revealed to be a Saiyan, it did not contradict the story, it explained it. From the beginning, he had a tail, transformed into a great ape, and showed strength far beyond normal humans. The Saiyan reveal enriched the narrative instead of rewriting it. The same applies to Piccolo being revealed as a Namekian, originally introduced as a demon, later recontextualized as an alien, and that reveal led directly into the Namek saga. These are good retcons. They deepen the lore and create narrative payoff without destabilizing the foundation of the story. Now compare that to what Dragon Ball Super introduces. Super adds an entire divine hierarchy after the events of Z, gods of destruction, angels, Xeno, multiversal balance, and cosmic oversight. On paper, that is fascinating world building. But narratively, it retroactively changes how we interpret the events of Dragon Ball Z. For example, the life link between the Supreme Kai and Beerus creates a huge contextual issue. During the Majin Buu saga, Shin was in extreme danger multiple times, and Buu was a universal-level threat. If the Supreme Kai dies, Beerus dies. So the unavoidable question becomes, where was Beerus during the Buu crisis? Super introduces this system, but it never fully reconciles it with the already completed stakes of Z. It does not recontextualize Z with strong narrative payoff. It layers new cosmology on top of a finished story. Another major inconsistency is the 28 planets with mortal life statement. This single line compresses the scale that Dragon Ball Z spent years building. In DBZ, the universe felt vast, mysterious, and dangerous. Frieza was portrayed as the emperor of the universe, ruling over what felt like a massive galactic empire. But if there are only 28 inhabited planets, that mythological scale suddenly shrinks. An emperor of 28 planets does not carry the same narrative weight as a tyrant ruling over a massive cosmic domain. This is not expansion, this is compression, and it changes how we perceive the original story's scope. Now here is where the theory becomes unconventional, but also surprisingly consistent with Dragon Ball's internal logic. Instead of forcing Super to be a direct continuation that perfectly aligns with Z, what if Super represents the original timeline of the Dragon Ball cosmology, and DBZ represents a rewritten historical timeline created after a massive reality-level alteration? This is not random speculation either, because Dragon Ball already has a built-in mechanism capable of rewriting reality on a universal and multiversal scale, the Super Dragon Balls. Unlike the regular Dragon Balls, they are not limited to small-scale wishes. They can alter existence itself, history, structure, and even cosmic systems. Under this lens, history would not need to be erased. It would be rewritten. Core anchor events could remain intact. Goku still meets Bulma, the Saiyan saga still happens, Frieza still exists, and Majin Buu still awakens. But the deeper cosmological framework behind those events could be altered. This would explain why Dragon Ball Z feels like a universe operating without visible divine oversight, while Super presents a heavily structured divine system constantly observing cosmic balance. DBZ would not be inconsistent. It would be a version of history where the influence of higher gods was diminished, hidden, or rewritten within the timeline itself. Explaining why Super is not DBZ becomes much clearer under this theory. It is not just a tonal difference or a writing shift, it is a cosmological perspective shift. DBZ presents a mythological universe driven by mortal stakes, escalating threats, and a sense of vast unknown space. Super presents a managed universe, governed by divine hierarchies, multiversal systems, and cosmic administration. Instead of being contradictions, these differences can be interpreted as symptoms of a modified timeline where the underlying structure of reality has been altered while preserving key narrative events. This also connects interestingly to future Trunks and time travel logic within Dragon Ball. Trunks already proves that changing the past does not overwrite a single timeline. It creates branching realities. His timeline and the main timeline coexist despite sharing major historical events. If standard time travel can create parallel histories, then a Super Dragon Ball Wish could theoretically operate on an even higher level, not just branching timelines, but rewriting the primary historical framework while leaving anchor events intact. In other words, similar events could still occur, but their context, scale, and cosmic oversight would feel different, which is exactly how DBZ and Super feel when compared side by side. What makes this interpretation powerful is that it resolves multiple inconsistencies at once. It explains why the gods never intervened in Z-level crises, why the universe feels larger in DBZ than in Super, why the divine hierarchy appears suddenly in Super, and why some Super lore feels disconnected from earlier narrative stakes. Instead of viewing these as continuity errors, they become narrative artifacts of a rewritten history rather than a broken canon. Most importantly, this interpretation protects Dragon Ball Z's legacy instead of diminishing it. DBZ remains an internally consistent historical continuity with massive scale, escalating stakes, and mythological storytelling from Saiyans to Buu. Meanwhile, Super operates as the original cosmic framework where the full divine system and multiversal structure are visible. Rather than saying Super ruins Z, a more coherent reading is that both coexist as logically connected, yet fundamentally different historical perspectives within a franchise that already embraces multiverses, time travel, and reality-altering wishes. And in a universe where timelines can branch and reality can be reshaped, the idea that history itself was rewritten while preserving major events does not break Dragon Ball's logic. It arguably fits it better than forcing every inconsistency into a single, untouched timeline.